Hello and welcome to part 2 in our 5-part series on the 12 powers of man and 12 steps to realization. We're working on realizing those divine powers within each one of us, those fundamental divine ideas that make up the Christ within, and expressing them, pressing them out into our life experience to create a more satisfying and fulfilling life. I'm Reverend Matthew Long from Peace Unity Network, PACEUNITY.net is the website, and I'm posting videos on the website as well as having some other materials that go along with the class, like the 12 Powers of Man, a digital copy of that from Charles Fillmore, as well as Powers of the Soul, which some people find more easier to read by Ella Pomeroy, a longtime Unity minister, and some other materials like the outline of this class for the 5 weeks, and the 12 steps of recovery, and the balancing our spiritual faculties worksheet. So probably some other materials posted there as well. And if you make it to the website, to the home page, you can look under library, and then classes for the 12 steps and 12 powers and 12 steps folder. So last week we introduced this idea of the relationship between the 12 powers and the 12 steps of recovery. That Bill W. was his secretary was the son of Emmet Fox's secretary. Emmet Fox was the minister at the First Church of Divine Science in New York City at the time that these ideas were percolating, and Emmet Fox considered Charles Fillmore, the author of 12 Powers of Man, his spiritual father. So we know that there was an indirect relationship, but we know that the 12 has been realized as a divine number for centuries, ever since going back to the 12 sons of Jacob and the 12 tribes of Israel, on up to the 12 apostles and the 24 elders in the book of Revelation, etc. There's so many different 12s we could talk about. But realizing that as a symbol for spiritual fulfillment, in other words, the combination of these creates a greater reality. So the 12 fundamental ideas are inherent within the Christ that is within each one of us. Within each one of us. Last week we talked about faith and strength and wisdom, as well as the first 3 steps of admitting that we're powerless over people, places, and things. Our lives are unmanageable, and that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, and then made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God. And today we're taking that to another level. So if you want to go back and see that video to see more about what we talked about there, that'd be great. Today we're moving on into the next chapter on regenerating love. I want to share just a little bit about this, just to get that concept of what is God. And he talks about God is first cause, the principle from which all from which flow all manifestations. The principle from which flow all manifestations. If you think about it, back in the book of Genesis, the first 4 words of the book of Genesis, in the beginning, God. In the beginning, God. If we just got those first 4 words, we wouldn't need the rest of the book. But it takes a little while to figure that out. That in the beginning, God. Well, what happened? God created the heavens and the earth. Well, what did God create the heavens and the earth out of? Well, in the beginning, there was only God. In the beginning, God. That's all that existed. And then existence, manifestation came into existence through these stages, an evolutionary process, if you will. That first principle, there is only God, and out of God all things flow. Inherent in the mind of being are 12 fundamental ideas. The 12 powers of man, fundamental ideas, that they are the basic, primal, divine ideas that make up the Christ within. In action appears primal creative forces. It's possible for man to ally himself with and to use these original forces, and therefore cooperate with the creative law. We can cooperate with the creative law. That's what we're learning to do. But in order to do this, he must detach himself from the forces and enter into the consciousness of the idea lying back of them. To separate ourselves, to detach ourselves from them, to be able to observe, get into that observer mind, to watch ourselves and to see this power in action and get into the consciousness of the idea lying back. And that's what we're attempting to do. He goes on to say that in Scripture, the primal ideas in the mind of being are called the sons of God. So we are all the son of God, the daughter of God, the expression of God. And it's these primal divine ideas within us that make up the Christ within. So today we're looking at love and power as the divine ideas, and we're looking at the fourth and fifth step of the 12-step process. The chapter on regenerating love talks about love as that pure essence of being. Love is that pure essence of being that binds together the whole human family. That love is what brings us together. He goes on to talk about gravity. And this, I was wondering where I got this, and it's been a while since I've looked at this book, and I have to remember, okay, yeah, I got this idea from Charles Fillmore, that gravity is just an expression of love. We talk about the four forces of nature. Einstein attempted to create the unified field theory that would tie them all together, gravity, electromagnetic, strong and weak nuclear forces, those four primal that we have not been able to come up with a formula that describes all four of them. But they are love. Love brings it all to gravity, is love. And he talks about how it's the love of the earth for humanity. And it's the love of God expressing through all of creation. Is that what brings us together, that ties us together? That love is part of that unified field and the essence of being. And love is closely aligned with wisdom. We talked about wisdom before, and wisdom, the disciple that is James, who represents wisdom, and John represents love. James and John were brothers, just as Simon Peter and Andrew were brothers. Faith and strength are closely aligned. That when we have our faith is strong, our bodies are strong. When our faith is weak, our bodies tend to be weak as well. Love without wisdom tends to be ineffectual and messy. And wisdom without love can be cold and calculating. But wisdom with love is designed to bring about the best for all involved. And love with wisdom is laser focused and effective. So the two go together quite well. Love, we talked about the positive, active, expressive, assertive aspects or abilities of each of these 12 spiritual faculties. And for love, it's that ability to nurture. So it's that activity of nurturing, of reaching out and touching others and assisting and helping, to express affection and goodwill. It's an attitude, so that passive, receptive, accepting aspect of love is that of empathy. Empathy, to be able to feel, to be empathetic is to feel with someone, to have that, to be able to feel with, to have that empathic experience, to be sensitive to spiritual needs. And so love is that faculty that binds us all together, and to become aware of that. And love, of course, is in the heart chakra, if you will, if you're a yogic or a Taoist and you understand the chakra system, basically right in the center of our chest, behind our hearts, is that spiritual faculty of love. And as we become aware, we can often think of times when we've had a broken heart, we felt empty inside, or possibly a burden, when somebody's ill or something's going on, we can feel that weight on our chest. And that is that love faculty being bound, and it's up to us to release it and let it go and to focus our energies on being nurturing and empathetic to experience that. And John is the disciple who represents that. Next we go on to Philip, who represents the spiritual faculty of power. And this is one of the reasons why I like to use, instead of 12 powers of man, in unity we say there's one presence and one power, and there's 12 powers of man, and then one of those powers is power. So I like to use that term spiritual faculties, a little less confusing, because power is one of those spiritual faculties. These are inherent within us. These are inherent within us, like I talked about with faith. Faith is not an ingredient that needs to be added as much as a muscle that needs to be developed and strengthened. And the same with love and power, that these are muscles that need to be strengthened. As we become aware of them, as we are either experiencing an expression of them or the lack of expression of them, we become aware of the spiritual faculties. And I invite you to meditate upon each one of these individually, talking about the power, the spiritual faculty, and we will have a 12 power meditation in the fifth lesson. So it's that vibratory energy. I love power. Power is a good one. The power of the word. In the beginning, God said in the book of Genesis, God said, let there be light. God said, let there be a firmament in the middle of the heavens. God said, let the separate waters be separated, etc., etc. It's that setting up that vibratory energy. In the book of John, he goes back to the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That word, that power of our words, of that vibratory energy. If you put your hands on your throat as you speak, you can feel that vibration, and that vibration is going out. Every word that we speak has its own vibratory energy. Every thought that we think, right? We can measure brain waves, and those brain waves aren't just bouncing off the inside of our heads. They're more like radio transmitters and receivers, that we are sending out this energy and receiving this energy, and it's based upon the faculty of our thinking, how we are, the thoughts that we are holding in mind, as well as the words that we speak, that we're setting up that vibratory energy. Talks about the power center is in the throat and controls all the vibratory energies of the organisms, is the open door between the formless and the formed worlds of vibrations pertaining to the expression of sound. It's that vibratory energy that opens all doors of mind and body. Speaking the word, the power of the word, that our lives come into expression through the word. And you think of those vibratory energies. That's one way I understand God, as the vibratory energy that creates the universe. Physics now has this thing called string theory. So at the basis, below the body, you have organs, and the organs you have cells, and in the cells you have molecules, and within the molecules you have atoms, and the atoms are made up of electrons and protons and neutrons, and these are made up in the subatomic level with quarks and neutrons and neutrinos and various, they keep coming up with different names for it. But at the very basis, before we get to anything that is solid, we have these things they call strings. That's the best. And they're vibrating. That's the best description they've been able to come up with it. That they are vibrating strings. And there's relationships, and they form relationships, and those relationships determine what the larger picture becomes. And it is through the relationships and through this basic that there's nothing but vibratory energy there. And that's what God is, the energy, the creative energy that is expressing as the universe, is expressing as you and me and all of creation. And at the very basic level is that vibratory energy. And we make contact that through the power of our word and through our thoughts. When we look at the 12 steps, we've had the first 3 steps of realize we are powerless and over people, places, and things, right? The only thing I have any control over is myself, what I think and what I say and what I do. And we go to the second step, realizing we're powerless and that our lives are unmanageable as long as we try to manage them. Have you ever tried to? I manage people and try to keep. It's like herding cats often, especially with musicians and ministers. It's like herding cats. It's unmanageable. When we come to believe, second step, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. When we continue to do the same thing that we've done over and over again, anticipating a different result, that's a definition of insanity. And that's a level a lot of us are at. We keep doing the same thing over and over again and keep getting the same result and thinking we're going to get something different. So it's time to go to a new level, to raise our consciousness, to get into the consciousness of these divine ideas. And it begins by making a decision. That third step, making a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God. Now, making a decision is not doing anything, right? 3 frogs sitting on a rock. One decides to jump in the water. How many frogs are on the rock? 3. Making a decision is not jumping in. And that's where steps 4 and 5 are the beginning of the process of actually doing it, of reaching out past our limitations. Step 4, making a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Making a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Now, a lot of people do searchless and fearing moral inventories, and that doesn't get us anywhere. And we're talking about an inventory is not just negatives, not just the bad stuff. It's the good stuff too. We have the positives and the negatives. The first time that I did this step, although I didn't realize I was doing it, was when I was in Mind Dynamics back in the early 80s. Actually, that was 70s, mid-70s. And did what they call them pineapple and stuff lists, right? Using a different S. But pineapple list was all the good things, all the good attributes, and the stuff list was all the other stuff that we'd like to let go of. And then we went through a process of letting go. And I've done these over and over again. The 4T Prosperity Program, our friend Stretton Smith and I, back when we were in school, came up with this idea. He took it. He got out early, and he got out a year before I did in seminary and started this program. My wife and I started it when we got into a year later, but then he copyrighted it. But the one thing I really take credit for is the money back guarantee, because that came out of Mind Dynamics, right? So you take this training, if you don't get anything out of it, you get your money back. And but it worked with the 12 steps of recovery, and that first time I really worked through the 12 steps, and I've done it over and over again since then through different programs that I participated in. But that's making us a fearless and a searching and fearless moral inventory, and looking at the positives and the negatives to be honest with ourselves. And then we get the opportunity to be honest with somebody else in the 5th step. That's where we admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. This is that confession step. Catholics do it all the time. There's power in that confession of releasing and letting go of the stuff that we're carrying around. Whether you call it sin. Sins, of course, are missing the mark. That literally means missing the mark. We aimed for love and we hit lust. We aimed for prosperity and we hit greed. It's just taking responsibility for our mistakes. That we're only as sick as our secrets. I love that phrase. We're only as sick as our secrets. So the stuff that we hold in and we don't share with anyone gets in the way of our experiencing our potential. We have to embrace the dark side, the shadow. I love Jungian psychology, realizing the shadow. Shadow is just those parts of us that we don't look at, that we're afraid to see. And we have to embrace the shadow in order to be whole, because it's part of us. Embracing doesn't mean we support it and want to do it some more. We realize that is part of us. And so it's that self-observation. That's our work, is self-observation, being aware of ourselves, what's going on. That's these first 5 steps, really, is just becoming aware of who and what we are so that we can get to where we want to go. And that's what we're going to do over the next 3 weeks, 3 more weeks of this. And I hope you'll join me as we continue on our affirmation to close out this session. God is, I am. The name of God is I am. And I love to use that phrase. God is, I am. All that God is, I am, can do and be through Christ, which strengthens me. Let's take that all together. God is, I am. All that God is, I am, can do and be through Christ, which strengthens me. So it is, and so it shall be. I believe it, I receive it, it is so. And all God's children said, Amen. And God bless. Go in peace.